Oh, yes.
Welcome back once again, everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Takara Tomy Generation Select number 7, and this is the Seacon Overbite. Now, I plan to review Overbite after Tentakill, but for some reason my Tentakill is going to be arriving a day late in the mail, so we're going to take a look at Overbite first. Overbite is the final Seacon that's being released as part of the King Poseidon Combiner, and per the Japanese configuration, he typically makes up King Poseidon's Target Master gun. Though if you want to go with the more traditional Hasbro approach, he actually makes up the arm that wields the gun, and his place is then taken by an autolator. Now, if you've seen my reviews, you know how this is going to go. We're going to take a look at the toy's packaging, open it up, see inside, look at the instructions, and then we'll take a look at Overbite himself in both his alternate and robot modes. I'll do the transformations for not only those, but his 2 limb modes and weapon mode. I'll do some comparisons with his mold mates, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So he comes in the same sleeve that Hasbro uses for all of their Takara Tomy product. So everything big bold letters right up front. And we open this up. Slide this away. And you have the inner box with another sleeve over it. And you just get this nice wireframe render of Overbite. You can see, if you're familiar with Power of the Primes, he's a very obvious retool of Ripper Snapper. So you got the same hands there. So, if you didn't know that, now you know. And slide this off. Plain old mailer type box here. Open it up. And inside is Overbite. And boy, is he loud. He's just got some very neon looking colors. Straight up late 90s goodness, or sorry, late 80s goodness. And you can see he's got the combiner hand, he's got a rifle and a sword. And then here you have his instruction sheet. Done up on nice glossy paper. You got his little parts layout here. Open this up carefully so I don't rip it. Across the front here, you have his transformation from Beast to Robot mode. Suggested placement for his normal weapons there. And then this begins his limb mode conversion. This looks like the leg first. Yeah, shows you how everything goes there. Doesn't seem to be any kind of weapon placement on the leg. That's a shame. And you have the arm configuration, followed of course by the weapon mode. And then this shows you where to store his weapons on the beast mode. Here's Overbite in his classic shark monster mode, as well as his accessories. Have his big rifle, his little sword or stinger type weapon, and then again the combiner hand. And it's the same exact one that have come with all the other Deluxe Seacons so far. And now, if you couldn't tell, he is a retool of Power of the Prime's Ripper Snapper and shares a lot of the same parts. And honestly, it's kind of funny because when Ripper Snapper was first revealed a couple years ago, people immediately noticed how easily he could be retooled into a decent Overbite. And I don't know if it was planned that far back, but they ended up being right. Because it didn't take a whole lot of change to transform him into a very convincing Overbite toy. So he hits most of the same beats as Ripper Snapper. He's got the tail piece here, just sticks out under his robot feet. Got the little legs there, clawed arms. He's got his fin to make you, absolutely certain this is a shark. And then he's got his head with nice painted silver teeth, red painted mouth. Everything opens and closes. And he looks nice. He's very colorful. If you don't like neon toys, this may not be your cup of tea. But he does blend those really bright fluorescent colors with even some more metallic colors. You got some silver right here. Noted the silver on the teeth, and also he's got a little bit of gold trim on his shoulders, which is interesting. As far as his underside, not too much obvious robot kibble. You can see the head here, but it's turned around, so that's good. He does still have that same little port that Rippersnapper has, though at least per the instructions, it's not used on this version of the toy. But it's always good to just have an optional 5mm port somewhere. It's also got one on the underside of his jaw, which I notice has been a common theme with the Seacon retools. But I don't think they're ever actually used officially. I guess they're just put there as extra ports. He also has the extra ports on his shoulders, which come straight from Rippersnapper. And those actually get used here. So, as far as his official storage, the way it's supposed to work, you take his hand, bend this little wrist peg down 1 notch, go ahead and lift all his fingers up and out of the way, and this actually attaches to him and stores in the exact same way it does on Rippersnapper, which is, as far as I know, unique. None of the other toys utilize the same storage method in their beast modes. And you have to position the fingers a certain way because of clearance with his tail there. So you go ahead and do that, and then his other weapons you plug onto the same spot that Rippersnapper uses. And they, at least officially, point backwards. If you don't drop them, you know. So you point them backwards, keep them out of the way. Though if you wanted to, you could point them forward so that he could use that sword or that gun in a more offensive capacity. And it looks pretty good. It's pretty unintrusive. It stays quite streamlined. I could see him swimming through the water like this. Doesn't make him back heavy or anything, so overall, it really works. Now here he is with Rippersnapper, and I left their combiner hands on for a moment just to show you what I was talking about. You can see they both use the same spot, same 2 tabs to store those. So I found that interesting. Even though they're technically different accessories, they are very similar in a lot of ways. So let's talk about what's the same, what's different with these two. Overbite's probably one of the least heavily retooled figures out of the Deluxes. Well, I guess out of all of them. But again, the mold just works for him, so there wasn't too much needed. So they utilized the same upper legs, but whereas the lower legs for Rippersnapper are this long compound part that's, you know, more leg and feet, he just has feet basically, which gives him a much more squat stance, but also kind of alters his posture to where he's leaning forward more, whereas Rippersnapper's mostly upright. Arms are exactly the same. Obviously there's going to be new robot heads that you'll see there. And then this bit right here, this whole shark head and back fin and all that assembly, that's pretty much all new. Though they seem to send all separate pieces here. Maybe. Yeah. So they seem to utilize the same kind of side panels where shoulder weapons connect. But yeah, they end up looking fairly different. Honestly, I think the biggest giveaway is the claws, the hands. Those just really kind of show you that this is the same toy. I like them though. Okay, now it is time for the transformation. So, first things we're going to do here, we're going to pull these under leg segments down. And now, it's a little different from Whippersnapper because this piece right here creates a bit of a clearance issue. You can see how his kneecaps are kind of wedged in there. So rather than try to pull them straight out, separate the legs and then kind of wriggle them out one at a time. Can be a real challenge, but it's doable. It's kind of a pain in the butt. You can manipulate this differently to make it a little easier for yourself. So whatever you have to do to make that motion work. Now go ahead, close the legs back up, get them where they need to be. The tail works the same way as it does in Rippersnapper. 2 halves just kind of fold up in these cavities, and you can see the way they're supposed to go in based on the shape. So we do that on this side like so. Take his big old floppy feet, and you don't actually do much with them. You leave them in this position, and you just plug them into those little nubs there on the sides of his legs. So his goofy feet create a little bit more of a clearance issue this time around. They don't really get in the way based on the molding of his ankles, but you can see they're like just barely out of the way. Go ahead and rotate his waist around. Let's bring his arms down, rotate the fists. And now his shark head and back section are a little more complex than Ripper Snappers. There's like 3 different pieces here. So you got this main piece, you have a little intermediate hinge, and then you have the shark head. So what you want to do is kind of bend the shark head inward a little bit, and you have to get it to line up into these notches the same way Ripper Snappers does. And then once you got it in there, kind of hold it and then pull this out to give him the most clearance on his back. Best way I can describe that. Turn the head around, and here you go. This is Overbite in his robot mode. He's got a very unique head sculpt. It's a little on the small side, but it's got a lot of crests going on here. It's got a very rounded mouth plate. He's just interesting looking. I kind of expected his head to be bigger just based on the enormity of his shark head, but he surprised me with that. When it comes to his weapons, the official placement for him, you take his sword, put it in this hand, take the big rifle, and this is the top, though technically you could hold it either way, but this is officially the top right here. So go ahead, plug it in like so, and you get that. And now as far as his hand, as is the case with the other Seacons, it doesn't show where to place it in robot mode. The best place that I found for it is actually right on the back of the shark head. Just go ahead, bend it in, and then you push it in. Now, my cockpits are very, very tight fit, and you may get a slight stress mark on this just from shoving it in there. So it's up to you if you want to risk doing that, if you mind having that little tiny stress mark. And once you get it in, it'll go in. It'll be fine. But you're going to stretch that hole out a little bit. And then you get on there and you just kind of curl the fingers up, get them out of the way. Make sure the stays plugged in. And luckily, because he's got some pretty wide feet and everything, this doesn't make him super back heavy or anything. So even though it's a bit of an eyesore, it's not in the way of any part of him. Could also plug it in here somewhere, though it's gonna, it's gonna kind of get in the way behind his arms and stuff. You could also probably just plug it onto his chest, and again, just deal with whatever clearance issues come from that thumb. End of the day, though, really up to you. Or you can just leave it off if you're not worried about having somewhere to store it. It's totally your call. But overall, he works. He's pretty simple. In this mode, there's not a whole lot of new stuff to see if you have Ripper Snapper already. Just the new weapons, I suppose. His colors do help him stand out a bit. That gold makes a reemergence here on the faceplate, so you get a little more of that. And he's got this red detailing on his knees, which is interesting. Actually, should have pointed that out in the shark mode, huh? For comparison, here's Ripper Snapper's robot mode. You can see just how similar they are. All the leg pieces, well, robot leg pieces, the arms, the torsos, all that exactly the same. So all the differences between them just come down to like the beast specific components, the head, and the accessories. That's pretty much it. All right, here's a quick group shot of all the Seacons minus Tentakill, because I know everyone's going to want to see that. So just consider this a little bit of an appetizer for what's coming tomorrow and the following days. And now, let's start doing those limb and weapon modes. So, first thing we're going to do, go ahead and remove his weapons. We're just going to get them out of the way for the time being. The gun's a really tight fit in his hand for some reason. I don't know why. Alright, so those are gone. Alright, we're going to do the arm mode first, just because this seems to be the best order to go. So, go ahead, turn his head around, flip the combiner peg out about 90. Just kind of make sure that stays attached. Now his legs, we're just going to snap them together. sure they're nice and stable. The beast feet are just going to keep pointing out like this. And in his case, let's go ahead and turn it this way. Now his robot arms, you're going to take the forearms, turn them backwards. Go ahead and have his claws pointing out, just so the robot fists aren't showing. And you want to actually pull down on the shoulders a little bit, drop them down, because these tabs on the forearms need to reach these little slots right here in his sides. You're just going to kind of push them in. Now, they don't stay in very well, but as long as you don't bump into them or anything, they'll be fine. They won't just flop out or anything. All right, again, make sure that this tail fin is kind of pulled out as far away from his hip as you can, so he's got clearance. All right, and then you just take the robot hand. Make sure you put the thumb in the right spot, and just plug it in right there to the wrist. And that's it. That is arm mode. Now, unlike all the other Seacons, this doesn't give us any kind of placement for any of his accessories, aside from, obviously the hand. Now, the sword is going to be part of King Poseidon's trident, so that's fine. This gun, however, it doesn't have anywhere to go. Now, there are places you can put it. Obviously, the best is probably on the top of the shark head again. Just kind of put it there. It's nice and out of the way. Now, it does look a little cumbersome, just kind of hanging off there, so it's up to you what you want to do with it. You can leave it on, take it off, but there is that option. Now, transforming him to his leg mode is going to be pretty similar to the other processes. More or less, just going to be collapsing his legs down. So what we want to do, go ahead and turn his waist to where his toes are pointing toward like his shark head, that direction. And now I have to get do things a little differently. So go ahead and actually pull the shark tail out, because it's not going to be able to go back in the same way once you collapse the legs down. So open this. Get this to shut and snap in place up there. Do the same thing for this leg. Just once it's in, push them together. Push all the halves together, do all that stuff. Come on. All right. Close the legs up. Now the tail, you're going to want it to go like this. So the top part of it is just going to be kind of pressed into the back of the legs, like so. Now on my copy at least, the tail kind of wants to separate a little bit in this mode. Nothing too bad, but I can't really get it to stay shut all the way. It's annoying, but not the end of the world. All right, make sure the beast legs have stayed pretty much the same. And then for the combiner peg, this part's kind of optional, but if you don't want his face poking out in the back of his knee, go ahead, flip it down, turn the head around, and then flip the peg all the way up. Reconnect the shark head if you have to. In there. Like that. It's a leg. Now, as per the usual, I've borrowed a combiner foot from Turtler. So go ahead, attach the robot fist to the back of the foot, level it out, and then plug the foot into the leg. That's it. That is the leg mode. Not very different from a lot of the other ones. And it's fully functional, shouldn't be any clearance problems. You got the kibble in the front, but that shouldn't block the knee or anything. And overall, it's just a decent looking leg. Again, there's no call outs for where to store the gun. Could put it in the same spot here, though now it's going to look really silly. It's just going to be sticking way out there. And it won't fit in these holes either, really, because of the arms, so you don't really have much in the way of options here. I suppose you could, maybe, well, can't even do that because the tail's in the way. So I guess the only place you can possibly store it is the front of the knee, and it's just going to be sticking way out there if you do. So that's unfortunate. There really doesn't seem to be anywhere you can put this thing. Now for the very last transformation, the target master or weapon mode. First thing I want to do, remove the combiner foot, get that out of there. Just keep the hand off to the side for now. Now you don't change too much in this mode. Biggest difference is that you're gonna flip the beast mode feet up. So just pointing straight out like that. And then the beast hands or robot hands, you're now gonna turn them to where the claws are facing, I guess what you consider downward. And now, again, you have an option. This peg's gonna have to rotate down 90. And if you want to turn his head around again to hide it better, you can always do that. I'm gonna go ahead and just do that, make it look nicer. And make sure that shark head stays in place. It does like to kind of wiggle out. All right, so that's the base of it. Now you take his rifle and you just plug it into the bottom of the feet. Now one thing I've noticed is that his beast legs don't want to stay plugged in as well with the feet pointing straight out like this. Creates a bit of a clearance issue. So they're going to be more likely to pop off of their little spot there. So just be aware of that. Now lastly, we're going to take our combiner hand. We're going to use it as the bottom part of this weapon. Now the tail is gonna kind of get in the way when you put this thing down, so you just kind of have to pose the fingers the right way. Get them to support the weight a little bit so it's not all in the tail. And there you go. That is his target master mode. It's okay looking, not my favorite, not my least favorite. And this is the one you're gonna see most often because this is the default configuration, right? Overbite as the weapon. Unless, of course, again, you go with the alternative and have Overbite wielding Nautilator or Lobclaw as the weapon. Now with that, this pretty much wraps up our review. So my overall thoughts on this guy, he's a decent looking figure, doesn't do too much out of the ordinary, you know, no mind-blowing retooling going on or anything. I do like to give him the new feet, made him a little more squat, you know, change his posture around so he looks more accurate to the original design and looks less alike Rippersnapper. The lack of storage space, or at least good storage space for his rifle and his limb modes, is a bit of a downer for me. All of the other limbs actually showed you where to store the objects or had some pretty good places where you could stick them. In this case, you kind of just have to keep the rifle out of the way, or maybe in the combined mode, just plug it onto someone else who has room to spare. I don't know. So overall, he's decent. I feel like I maybe not hyping him up enough. I don't know what it is. I don't feel the same level of excitement that I have for some of his teammates. But there's nothing wrong with it at the same time. He's just very standard. He does everything right. Doesn't do anything wrong, really. I should point out, he does have like 3 5mm ports on the bottom of each of his beast feet, so that's kind of neat. And load him up with all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's just as good as the others, and you know, if you've gotten to this point and you've dug your heels in for this combiner, I mean, there's no point in stopping now, right? Might as well get him to complete the set. And I gotta say, I'm excited because tomorrow I should have the final piece of this and we'll finally get to look at King Poseidon together. It's gonna be some good stuff. So anyway, now that I've said my piece, I want to know what you all think. Are you impressed with Overbite? Does he tick all the right boxes for you? Is there anything you would have changed about him? I'd love to know what you all think in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. And thank you for joining me for this look at the Seacon Overbite. And with all that said, I will see you next time.